Chapter 41 Meeting Love at the Corner, Kakuzu, hello. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'll kill you. Hayden felt a surge of helplessness and fury, especially since he couldn't swim or walk on trees. Seeing this, Shinnon, who had been silently observing, narrowed his eyes and said calmly, I don't need to fight. I can carry him down. Uchiha thought to himself that Shinnon could probably carry him in a marathon. However, if Shinnon carried Hayden, it would be like throwing him to the wolves. Shinnon had been eyeing Hayden, trying to figure out what to do with him. Despite acting like he was just watching, there was no telling what he might do if given the chance. Let's check out the situation first. Uchiha shook his head, pointing towards the city wall near the cliff. Then, he turned to Hayden. And Hayden, get ready to hang tight. Hayden was silent. Terumi Mei, standing beside him, nodded. Then I'll leave it to you, Uchiha Ci. Go down from here. There's a tree halfway down. Hide there. With your Sharingan, you should be able to get a clear view of the defenses on the city wall. Report back every 15 minutes. After 3 reports, we move out. We don't have much time. Dawn is coming. With that, Mei Terumi took off her ninja pouch from her waist and tossed it to him. I'm not exactly a shuriken expert. I don't have a ton of ninja tools. Just 3 kunai, 10 shuriken, and a couple of explosive tags. Enough. Uchiha Ci caught it, weighed it in his hand, instantly gauging its contents, and attached it to his waist. He stood at the edge of the cliff, glanced down, estimating the drop at nearly 400 meters. The wind from below the cliff ruffled his hair, and the mist clinging to the mountainside looked like the gaping maw of some monster-filled abyss. He grinned and jumped, watched by the 3 others. Whoosh. He plummeted. Uchiha Ci activated his Sharingan in mid-air and quickly located the tree Terumi Mei had mentioned. He took out a bandage, folded it, tied it to the end of a kunai, and threw it downward. The kunai snagged on the tree trunk, held by the bandage. Uchiha Ci pulled on the bandage, spinning to change his trajectory, and landed lightly on the tree. Then, he carefully examined the city wall below. Just as Hayden had said, the castle was heavily guarded. The night passed, and half an hour later, Uchiha scaled the cliff. Using his hands and feet, climbing was easier on his chakra than running. As soon as Uchiha Ci pulled himself over the edge, Terumi Mei looked at him anxiously. How'd it go? Report to the commander. Uchiha grinned and gave a quick rundown of the information he'd gathered. A bunch of small fries. Nothing major. 6 guys are supposed to respond to Chuck, all genin, patrolling in 2 shifts. Most of them are guarding the entrance to the underground cave. 2 are on the city wall. Climbing onto solid ground, Uchiha Ci briefly analyzed the situation. Take out one of them, and we'll have at least 10 minutes to get underground, and then. But, before he could finish, Uchiha suddenly tensed, his gaze shooting past Terumi Mei to something behind her. His Sharingan picked up a huge, glowing mass with a terrifying chakra signature, slowly approaching. Then what? Terumi Mei frowned. Uchiha Ci's mouth suddenly felt dry. He pursed his lips, his eyes narrowing. How do I put this? I think I just spotted a big crocodile. Crocodile? Terumi Mei was baffled, wondering why he'd be afraid of a reptile. She said, don't worry. Ci, crocodiles are probably more afraid of you than you are of them. Yeah, right. Uchiha muttered, subtly placing his hand on the ninja pouch at his waist. We'll see about that. Seeing Uchiha Ci's movements, the other 3 focused, following his line of sight into the deep darkness behind them. In the dense forest beyond the cliff, the soft crunch of footsteps grew louder. Under the moonlight, a tall figure wearing a Taki Ninja Village rogue headband, a black mask, and a full-body black robe, with piercing green eyes, slowly emerged. Uchiha Ci's heart sank when he recognized the figure. It was the man who possessed the secret technique Earth Grudge Fear, the Akatsuki organization's future treasurer, and currently a top enforcer at the Ninja World's underground money exchange. A shadow-level powerhouse, Kakuzu. Step, step, his feet crunched on sand and kicked up dust. Kakuzu's eyes were cold and indifferent as he slowly approached. Took me a while to find you, but I didn't expect you to come back on your own. He scanned the faces of the four, paused briefly on Shinong, frowned, and then fixed his gaze on Haydn behind the three. He muttered, "This is going to be a pain. This amount of money isn't enough. I'll have to go back and ask them to add more." With that, Kakuzu stepped forward, his eyes icy, and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the kid behind you. Or die." As the words left his mouth, a wave of terrifying murderous intent washed over them. Uchiha Ci and Terumi Mei involuntarily took a step back under the intense pressure, and Haydn, still green, facing his future best partner, felt his pupils shrink, his body tremble, and he stumbled backward. He didn't stop until he reached the cliff's edge. Who is this guy? Haydn looked terrified. He had never encountered someone like this before, someone who could paralyze him with just a look. Shinong, on the other hand, didn't budge. Kakuzu's murderous aura was like a light breeze on his face. However, he still retreated several steps, distancing himself from the team, as if to say, "Go ahead and fight, I'll just watch." Taki Ninja Village's S-rank missing Nin, the ninja world's top bounty hunter, Kakuzu. Terumi Mei's pupils shrank as she recognized him. She drew a kunai from her thigh holster, her hand already forming hand signs, ready for battle. Uchiha Ci stared grimly at Kakuzu, who had come for Haydn. He felt a surge of disbelief. The butterfly effect he had created was starting to cause a storm. The immortal duo, who were supposed to be partners, were now enemies, and Uchiha Ci, was he really about to fight Kakuzu to protect Haydn's brain? Am I playing Plants vs. Zombies? After a moment of stunned silence, Uchiha Ci snapped his head around, pointed at the cliff, and shouted at Haydn, "Haydn, jump." What? Chapter 42 The Team's First Battle. The oppressive power of a shadow-level powerhouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Haydn, eyes wide with shock, snapped his head up to stare at Uchiha Ci, seriously, dude? You're ditching me like this, star? We're talking a 400-meter drop here. You're just gonna let me fall? Before Haydn could even process what was happening, Uchiha Ci's face hardened. He launched himself forward, kicking Haydn square in the butt and sending him tumbling over the cliff's edge. You son of a, Uchiha Ci. Bleep. Bleep. Clutching his backside, Haydn's curses echoed as he plummeted, the rest of his tirade lost to the void. Silence fell. Uchiha Ci turned to face Terumi Mei's stunned and bewildered expression, then, he flashed Kakuzu a bright smile. Well, Mr. Kakuzu, looks like nobody's here anymore. Mission accomplished. Truth is, I just wanted to off this kid here anyway. Since we both had the same goal, I figured I'd lend a hand. Uchiha paused, spreading his hands wide. Hey, no hard feelings, right? Let's just pretend we never saw each other, and we can all go our separate ways, okay? Kakuzu was floored by Uchiha Ci's sudden move. The moment Haydn went over the edge, his green eyes went wide. He stood there, speechless, before finally turning to Uchiha Ci, what's this guy's deal, star. What did he have against that kid, star. That kick was pretty damn decisive, star. But then, hearing Uchiha's words, Kakuzu's face darkened, a storm gathering. Who told you to stick your nose in my business? Kakuzu growled, his teeth gritted, his eyes fixed on Uchiha Ci with cold fury. My mission was to bring that brat back alive. What? Uchiha Ci's brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of ruthlessness in his eyes, but on the surface, he went into full-blown act. He started trembling, his face paling, he stammered, waving his hands defensively. I didn't know, honest. I mean, look, he's dead. But Kakuzu, having just lost a fat payday for no reason, was in no mood for excuses. He raised his right hand, a chilling glint in his eyes, his palm open and flat. Then you die. The words exploded from his lips. The stitches on Kakuzu's palm began to split, thin tendrils of earth-based chakra spilling out. Then, with a twist of his torso, he lunged, his hand shooting forward. In an instant, his right hand extended, slicing through the air. It hurtled towards Uchiha Ci across the 10-meter gap. This was the secret technique, Earth Grudge Fear. A hidden, lurking tendril, born from the battlefield, always ready to strike. These tendrils were made of countless fine threads, so delicate they could sew blood vessels and meridians. The hand smashed through the air, making Uchiha envious. If I had that kind of reach, I wouldn't have to buy ridiculously expensive ninja wire anymore. But looking at the incoming hand and the tough tendrils connecting to it, Uchiha's eyes narrowed. When it came to playing with threads, Uchiha was the real pro. He whipped out a kunai, and in a silent flash, his black pupils turned scarlet. What are you waiting for? Do something. Beside him, Terumi Mei frowned at Uchiha's inaction, shifted her weight, and threw a water-formed knife in her hand. Instantly, the water release, water Fang bullet arced around behind Kakuzu's palm, striking the tentacle, spinning as it hit. The continually pressurized blade sliced at the tendrils, fine water droplets scattered everywhere. Surprisingly, it barely scratched a few of the tendrils, which were quickly replaced by the endless flow of chakra. Watching the water sword revert to a kunai and fall uselessly, Terumi Mei's eyes narrowed. Tough stuff. These tendrils are so resilient, even a water Fang bullet can't cut through them. Looks like I'll have to use that jutsu. She frowned, stepping in front of Uchiha Ci, feet planted shoulder-width apart. Then, she formed the hand seals. Oxhair Tiger Rat Boar Rooster. Lava Release, Melting Apparition Technique. Terumi Mei completed the final seal and took a deep breath. Then, she parted her lips slightly. Magma-like, with terrifying heat, able to dissolve even Susanoo, it spewed forth from Terumi Mei's mouth. Huh? What? Kakuzu's pupils shrank. Seeing what Terumi Mei had unleashed, he felt a primal jolt of fear. He immediately diverted some of the Earth Grudge Fear tendrils to defend himself, trying to stop the lava release from destroying his outstretched hand. The magma slammed into the tentacles, consuming them like dry kindling, instantly melting every tendril in its path. Sizzle, sizzle. The scene was like hot oil meeting cheese, with a cloud of smoke and steam rising. Snatching his hand back, Kakuzu narrowed his eyes, now considerably more serious. He glanced at Uchiha Ci and Terumi Mei, as if reassessing them, and nodded. The Sharingan and the lava release Kekkei Genkai, not bad. You might just recoup some of my losses. I'll try to keep your bodies intact. So, die quietly. As soon as he finished speaking, a line of subtitles appeared in front of Uchiha Ci. Kakuzu thinks you are worth a little money. Hearing Kakuzu's dismissive words, Terumi Mei's face iced over. She retorted coldly, your puny tendrils are useless against me. Keep this up, and I'll kill you. Kakuzu shook his head slightly, regarding them with his calm, green eyes. He twisted his neck, and a shifting sound came from beneath his black cloak. Then, he asked calmly, and how exactly do you plan to deal with this? Finishing his sentence, Kakuzu opened the black robe with both hands, revealing the blue-patterned bird mask on his chest. The mask opened its dark mouth. All the surrounding plants, trees, insects, and rocks were sucked into it and condensed into a screeching mass of wind. Boom! The compressed wind blast shot out. Wind release, pressure damage. This so-called wind release ninjutsu, which is said to be the strongest in Hokage's regular form, showed its prowess in front of the two people in the team. With the cutting power of wind release and pressure spitting out wind bombs, the long river of molten magma that Terumi Mei spits out, he was pushed directly upwards and shot through. After shooting through, the magma exploded, and then it passed by Terumi Mei's ear and shot straight 500 meters. Hit it hard against the mountain opposite. Boom! Dancing in the storm. Huge rubble fell. The screams and howls of the refugees from the country of Yu immediately sounded below. The noise instantly ignited the silent night. Mei Terumi opened her eyes wide. Her face was stiff, her mind was blank, and there was blood flowing out of her ears because the sonic boom had scratched and shattered her eardrums. It is slowly flowing down. I almost beat him to death. It was too weak. Why don't we try another method? Kakuzu exhaled and frowned in embarrassment. Put your hands together. The mask on the chest climbed up along the shoulders and was replaced by another yellow-striped dog-head mask. He slowly walked towards the two of them. Step, step. The soles of her feet crushed dust, gravel, and dissolved earth, as well as the girl's proud heart, raising up the gray mist that covered the sky. Next moment, the densely packed tentacles of earthly resentment surged up from behind Kakuzu, condensing into 8 huge black lines. Like 8 pitch-black snake spears. Kakuzu's indifferent and cold voice slowly fell and said the name of this technique. Secret technique, Earth Grudge Mode. A trace of sweat fell on Terumi Mei's forehead, looked up in horror. Chapter 43 The Golden Escape Technique makes you super rich. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 43 Golden Escape, The Art of Super Richness. Terumi Mei, head tilted back, stared at Kakuzu, her face a mask of cold fury. Her gaze darted to the 8 massive black spears behind him and the countless dark tentacles creeping in to fill every inch of her vision. The sky went black, swallowing even the light of the full moon. Then, like a switch flipped, pure murderous intent flooded the air. In a split second, thousands of tentacles lashed out. They were about to be completely engulfed, crushed into nothing. Die! 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 Terumi Mei's eyes widened, desperately scanning every possible escape route. Sweat beaded on her brow as panic set in. There was nowhere to go. Tentacles slammed in from the front, a sheer cliff loomed behind. She could incinerate the black tentacles with her lava release techniques, but given their sheer number and constant regeneration, she wouldn't last long, not even if she burned through all her chakra. Besides, the tentacles weren't the real threat. Melting them was pointless. The key was Kakuzu, the S-rank rogue ninja summoning them. His mask seemed to let him use a bunch of different ninja techniques. The blue bird mask was all about wind release, with its devastating wind pressure attacks. What did the yellow dog mask on his chest represent? Earth release. So what? How many more masks did he have? Did they do anything besides let him cast jutsu? This was bad, bad, bad. Fear clamped down on Terumi Mei's heart. She watched the tentacles closing in, despair washing over her. Even her hands trembled as she tried to form the seals, nearly causing her chakra to go haywire. Terumi Mei was still just a kid, about the same age as Uchiha Ci. Even if she was a total prodigy, she wasn't the future Mizukage yet, the one who'd crushed the Bloody Mist era. Seeing the terror etched on Terumi Mei's face, Uchiha Ci stepped forward, took her by the shoulders, and pulled her behind him, striking a heroic pose. A hero's always fashionably late. Time for me to shine. What did you say? Terumi Mei stared at Uchiha, shocked. Is he secretly powerful? Has he been playing us all this time? But then she remembered how those 3 cult members nearly beat him to a pulp. Her face contorted. She grabbed Uchiha Ci by the back of his pants and yanked him back, wanting to kick his butt. Get real. You're no match for him. Uchiha Ci just smirked, thinking, she has no clue about the whole heroic entrance thing. He faced the incoming swarm of tentacles, fearless, and held up his bankbook for all to see. With a booming voice, he shouted, I've got money. Terumi Mei's breath hitched. Horror flooded her veins. Was he seriously trying to bribe a stone-cold, ruthless bounty hunter? Did he even realize Kakuzu made more in a single mission than he could make in a lifetime? There was no way Kakuzu would care about his money. What a joke. Terumi Mei mentally screamed, wanting to stuff Uchiha's head down his pants, gag him, and run far away. But the moment Uchiha yelled, swish everything changed. The wind died down, the waves calmed, and an eerie silence fell. The tentacles froze mid-strike, revealing Kakuzu behind them. His green eyes bored into Uchiha Ci. His tone shifted, becoming almost cautious. Maybe even a little welcoming. The corners of his mouth, hidden beneath the black mask, visibly twitched upward. He slowly opened his mouth and asked in a low voice. How much? Terumi Mei almost choked, unable to exhale the breath she was holding. She gaped at Kakuzu, just as shocked as when Uchiha had flashed the bankbook. Mr. Kakuzu, what happened to your dignity? Where was the pride of an S-rank rogue ninja, a Kage-level badass? He was seriously asking this kid how much he was offering. Was it just her, or was the whole world going crazy? Terumi May suddenly felt like she couldn't understand anything anymore. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift. Uchiha grinned. He wasn't about to admit he was broke. He'd blown every last penny of his 7-figure savings on exploding tags. Now, he had nothing but a bandage and his underwear. Instead, he adopted a cocky, defiant stance, one eyebrow raised, looking down on Kakuzu. He slowly asked. "Mr. Kakuzu, have you ever heard of the golden release, super rich technique?" That the words gold and super rich seemed to spark something in Kakuzu's eyes. He asked impatiently, "Is that a bloodline limit?" Uchiha Ci smiled, calm and cool. Golden release is the powerful ability to use money to pave the way and solve 99% of life's problems. I'm not bragging, but as a member of the super-rich Uchiha clan, I know a thing or two about this. Just last year, the clan gave me a piece of land in Konoha's prime business district. It's worth over $1 million. Right now, all my money is in this bankbook, including real estate, shops, and assets in my name. And you, my friend, Mr. Kakuzu. You just have to let us live." Uchiha Ci dangled the small green notebook between his fingers, grinning. "It's all yours, ding, Kakuzu swallowed hard, his eyes glued to the bankbook in Uchiha Ci's hand. How much was really there, $1 million. No, land in Konoha's best area had to be worth at least $3 million. Throw in everything else the kid mentioned, $8 million. $10 million. Kakuzu's breathing quickened. This sounds promising. Terumi May stared at the bankbook in Uchiha's hand, her mind racing. Was Uchiha hiding some secret identity? Maybe he was Uchiha Itachi, the eldest son of the clan. No, that couldn't be right. He was too young. Maybe Fugaku Uchiha, head of the Konoha military police, had an illegitimate son. Before Terumi May could collect her thoughts. Uchiha's eyes flashed, his muscles coiled, and his stance shifted. He pulled off a perfect Uchiha-style shuriken throw, using the bankbook instead of a blade. The thin bankbook became a blur of white as it cut through the air. Without waiting to see if Kakuzu would chase after the bankbook, Uchiha spun around, scooped Terumi May up, his hands grasping her waist and legs, then his eyes hardened. He charged straight for the edge of the cliff, and jumped. Chapter 44. Let physical skills be as good as gymnastics. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 44. Let's see if you've got the agility of a gymnast. Yikes. So, what's it like leaping off a 400-meter cliff with a beautiful woman in your arms? The wind whipped at his hair as Uchiha strained to keep his eyes open. His Sharingan darted around, searching for any handhold to slow their descent. Whoa! 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 Terumi May, clutched in his arms, was freaking out. She instinctively grabbed whatever she could, one hand clamped over Uchiha's face, the other digging into his waist. Seriously? Ow! Uchiha yelped, swatting away the hand attacking his face. Lady, stop wiggling. You're blocking my view. You're insane. You're insane. You're insane. Terumi May shrieked, staring at the rapidly approaching ground. Even for ninjas, a fall like this was a death sentence. Hit the brakes. Calm down. Uchiha yelled. Listen up. I'm throwing you off when I count to 1. Grab the cliff. Miss it, and you're toast. Terumi May looked at the young man, and panic began to slowly ebb away. She needed to be calm. How am I supposed to be calm right now? This is a cliff dive. Why am I jumping off a cliff with this guy, that we've known each other for less than a day? Romance authors wouldn't even write something this crazy, okay? Just as Terumi May was losing it, Uchiha glared, pulled out a kunai, and jammed it into the cliff face. Shriek, rocks shattered, dust flew. Uchiha fought the urge to rub his eyes, forcing them open, the whites quickly turning bloodshot. The kunai scraped down the rock, slowing them down a bit. Uchiha timed it, and when the kunai finally jammed in a crevice, he hauled with one arm, chakra surging, using a force that threatened to rip his muscles apart. 1. He roared, using the kunai as a fulcrum to hurl Terumi Mei upwards. What? Now? Terumi Mei cried. The next instant, she was flying, landing right next to a tree clinging to the cliff. There was a bandage tied to the trunk, with a kunai dangling from it, and on the other end, Flying flailing section, Haiden, whom Uchiha had kicked off the cliff earlier, was somehow still alive. He was clinging to the bandage, trying to climb up with a terrified expression. He looked up, and saw Mei Terumi flying right at him. Haiden's face contorted, his eyes wide. I am an idiot. Get away from me. Luckily, Mei Terumi was no ordinary ninja. Recovering quickly, she controlled her descent, landing gracefully on the tree trunk. The tree barely shook. She even had the strength to reach down and haul Haiden up. Meanwhile, Uchiha's kunai, wedged in the rock, snapped with a crack. He continued to plummet, but, seeing that both members of his team were safe, he relaxed, turning his attention to the fast-approaching ground. Uchiha quickly weaved hand signs, then faced the ground, adopting the stance of a Kamehameha, then wind style, air pressure bomb. A massive amount of chakra condensed in his palm, erupting as a huge blast of compressed air and sonic waves. Whoosh. Whoosh. Whoosh, star. The wind slammed downwards, flattening the dense forest below. Birds exploded into the air, wings flapping frantically. The blast not only stopped Uchiha's fall, but sent him rocketing upwards again. Immediately afterwards, the Sharingan flared, a bright red glow in the night. Uchiha, channeling his inner gymnast, launched into a series of unbelievable maneuvers. One-handed spins, 360 twists, giant circles, touching his toes, rotating around an invisible bar, a complete circus act in mid-air. Thwack, star. He slammed into the cliff face. Ouch. On the tree, Mei Terumi and Haiden watched, quietly impressed. Classic Uchiha. This was your carefully planned escape route? And that's the first time I have heard a scream like that echo from the cliff. Terumi Mei walked along the cliff face, pulled Uchiha out of the rock, and sighed in admiration. Blag. Uchiha spat out a mouthful of dirt, wiping blood from his forehead. He took a deep breath and grinned at Terumi Mei. Basics are pretty good, except for that last part where my eyes couldn't keep up. I'd give myself a 98 out of 100. Then, focusing chakra to his feet, he stood upright on the vertical cliff face. He looked down to see Haiden's scowling face below, a figure of darkness. You have some nerve. You actually said that out loud. I'm going to kill you. Do you know what would have happened if I didn't grab that bandage? Haiden's eyes flashed with rage, waving the bandage in Uchiha's face. Look at it. How dangerous was that? Star. Is that how you're saving me, Star? Without a word, Uchiha snatched the bandage from Haiden's hand, removed the kunai, and shoved it back into his pouch. After a moment, he said quietly. You either grab that or that tree. Haiden blinked. There was a hint of something in Uchiha's words. So, was the bankbook you gave Kakuzu legit? Terumi Mei suddenly asked, recalling the near-death experience and unable to help herself. Are you kidding? Of course it was fake. Uchiha turned, looking up from the cliff face with a serious expression. There's barely enough for a number 3 combo meal. Probably not enough to cover our lives. Terumi Mei blinked, a total knowledge gap, and blurted out. Combo number 3. What's that? As she spoke, 0.8 massive black tentacles erupted from the top of the cliff. They smashed rock and tore apart the cliff, horrifyingly strong. In the next instant, the tentacles plunged into the cliff wall, like drawing back a bowstring. The bow curved, taut and creaking, like a full moon. Suddenly, a figure with a face as dark as a pot shot downwards. Kakuzu, bristling with 8 massive black tentacles of hatred, looked murderous. His face was a mask of fury at being tricked, and he bellowed. You insignificant worm! How dare you make a fool of me? Die! Uchiha was momentarily speechless. He didn't know how to explain this problem to Terumi Mei. He gave a nervous laugh, scratched his head, and looked up at the diving Kakuzu, his eyes hardening. Well, that's probably a scraping set that all men like. Then, he turned, weaved hand signs, grinned at Terumi Mei, and asked. Ready? The real fight starts now. Chapter 45 Charging Towards Death, The Justice of Gangmen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thanks to chakra, ninjas can navigate any terrain. Uchiha Ci stood on a near-vertical cliff, Sharingan eyes focused, ahead, a gloomy night sky, and Kakuzu's earth grudge spears incoming, like arrows. Behind, a bottomless abyss, certain death, no retreat. Only fight, the wind whipped Uchiha's long hair. He remained calm, hands forming seals, light red chakra gathering on his palms. He slammed his hand against the cliff face. A massive circular seal expanded, a light red shield locking onto Kakuzu, then flared to life. A revamped version of Kumogakure's super death battle barrier, now expanded. Mid-air, Kakuzu's eyes narrowed. Something felt off. This kid was weak. Why was he fighting back, trapping him in a barrier? Was this some kind of trick? A sneak attack? Kakuzu, calm and calculating, a survivor since the Warring States period, instantly ran through countless scenarios, trying to figure out what this kid was planning. His tentacles plunged into the cliff, halting his momentum, too late. A light red barrier had already sealed him and Uchiha Ci inside. When the dust settled, Kakuzu stared, bewildered, at the barrier separating him from Uchiha Ci. What is this kid doing? Was his brain fried? Isolating his teammates outside? What could one Sharingan Uchiha possibly do against him? Nearby, Terumi Mei regained her composure, Uchiha's defiant words sparking a fire in her. She, who had always been determined to lead Kirigakure to glory as Mizukage, felt ashamed of her earlier performance. Now, gathering her strength, she would show the fire of a Kirigakure prodigy. With Uchiha Ci's barrier in place, her boil release would be decisive. Even against Kakuzu, the S-ranked rogue ninja and underground mercenary. Wait, Terumi Mei was confused. Was Uchiha Ci's barrier crooked? Hey! Uchiha! I'm not inside yet. Terumi Mei frantically pounded the barrier, yelling, open the door and let me in. What are you doing? Sweat dripped from Terumi Mei's brow as she stared, dumbfounded, at Uchiha Ci, so close yet seemingly worlds away. She imagined him bathed in light, waving goodbye, ascending to the heavens. A light red barrier had risen between them. Terumi Mei's eyes widened. Are you crazy? You're taking on that monster alone. The barrier sealed itself, trapping him and Kakuzu together, and Uchiha smiled. He turned to Terumi Mei, his eyes like starlight. Sorry, Mei Terumi. This is my only play. Uchiha paused, glancing at the two behind her, and said casually, he's an S-ranked rogue ninja with Kage-level power. An enemy we can't beat, no matter what, so this is the only way. Isolate the opponent in a suitable location, and then buy time with the barrier. Mei Terumi, take Haiden and get out of here. I don't care what you do afterward. But this is my battlefield now. Uchiha turned, calm, and drew a kunai, holding it before him, its blade pointed at Kakuzu. A defiant smirk played on his lips. Mr. Kakuzu. Want to hurt them? Then you'll have to go through me first. TCH. Kakuzu frowned, a hint of annoyance in his eyes. This life-or-death bravado struck a nerve. He remembered similar scenes from his past as an elite ninja from Takigakure. He'd faced life-or-death crises before. But unlike Uchiha Ci's selfless sacrifice, he'd been betrayed. The team sent to assassinate the ninja god had fallen apart, his comrades abandoning him. He had been forced to step forward and take the blame. His assassination attempt had failed, as expected, and he'd returned to the village in despair. But the village didn't offer comfort, understanding, or even a hospital bed. Instead, he was charged with mission failure and sentenced to punishment. The ninja who risked his life for the village was treated cruelly. Ah, another tiresome ninja game. Kakuzu shook his head, studying Uchiha Ci with a newfound interest. It was like seeing his younger self, across time, telling his younger self soberly and indifferently. Poor kid. Face reality. This world won't give you what you want. The longer you live, the more you realize that it's filled with helplessness, pain, and emptiness. Teammates will stab you in the back. The beliefs you stake everything on will be shattered. Leaders who demand your loyalty will treat you like a disposable tool. Kakuzu paused, a spark of passion in his eyes. But money will never betray you. Uchiha took a deep breath. He's right, bonds, friendship, are lies for children, I didn't come all this way for nothing. I did it for the 500 million. Isn't that what I'm living for, Uchiha nodded, then activated his Sharingan, preparing himself to be at his best. He would pour everything he had trained for, every drop of struggle into this moment, turning it into power. He looked at Kakuzu and shouted coldly, "Come on, monster. Right here, right now. Give me my destined death." Scarlet light blazed in Uchiha's eyes. He lunged forward. 3 shurikens shot from his hand, one aimed at Kakuzu's chest, the other 2 arcing to strike the concealed masks on his back. Knowing Kakuzu's intelligence, he knew of his immortal body. Only by destroying the 5 hearts under the 5 masks could he be defeated. But faced with Uchiha's defiance, Kakuzu's expression remained unchanged. He met Uchiha's charge, putting away his earth grudge spears. He unbuttoned his black robe, casting it aside. His tall, muscular body, covered in stitches, was revealed. He flexed a fist, shrugged, his face sneering with contempt. You think you're tough, kid? Let me show you. What reality is. Kakuzu is contemptuous of your bravery and seems to want to beat you into a pulp. Courage is the crystallization of human wisdom. Anyone who disparages courage will be punished by the power of justice. S-level long-term mission triggered. Make Kakuzu understand that courage is worth more than money. Progress will be tracked based on changes in the other party's understanding, joining, and transcending. Current progress is 0/3. Chapter 46 Water Escape Water Fang Blade. Believe in miracles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 46 Water Escape, Water Fang Blade. Believe in miracles. Kakuzu wasn't letting his guard down after that statement. He saw the 3 shurikens flying straight for his weak spots, and while he didn't know exactly what was happening, he figured it was just Uchiha's dumb luck. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. He stomped hard against the cliff face, kicking up a few stones, and launched himself forward with a powerful, sweeping kick. The stones whistled through the air as they fell. He knocked away 2 shurikens with sharp bangs, narrowly dodging the third. By now, Uchiha was right on top of him. His feet shifted slightly, and he twirled the kunai in his hand, aiming a straight thrust at Kakuzu's chest and heart. Kakuzu immediately adjusted, turning sideways and snapping his elbow toward Uchiha's face. The movement was so fast, Uchiha couldn't track it clearly. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck prickle, and alarm bells went off in his head. Talent, combat intuition, entry, activated. His body instinctively ducked to avoid the blow. This time, Kakuzu was momentarily surprised. While taijutsu wasn't his specialty, over 70 years of combat experience, coupled with his augmented physical abilities, meant his movements should be far too fast for a single Tomo Sharingan to follow. Uchiha seized the opening, immediately lifting his kunai and slashing at Kakuzu's left ankle. At the same time, he threw a side kick, using a technique from Kumogakure's swastika taijutsu, a 2-pronged attack. He aimed to take out Kakuzu's good leg. Kakuzu's eyes narrowed, the stitches on his left foot burst open, and 7 or 8 threads of earthly resentment shot out, wrapping around Uchiha's kunai. He then swung his right leg like a scorpion's tail, aiming a vicious kick at Uchiha's face. Uchiha was shocked again and reflexively threw up his arms to block. He gripped the kunai tightly, trying to sever the thin threads wrapped around it. The kick sent him flying backward. Snap, the threads were cut. Game over, Kakuzu declared coldly, grabbing Uchiha's face and slamming it into the cliff. Boom, rocks exploded, and blood splattered. Uchiha's head swam. He was a mess. With the last of his awareness, he managed to shove the kunai back into his ninja pouch. Kakuzu grabbed Uchiha, who was slumped against the cliff. His eyes were cold as he sneered, "Looks like that's all you've got. What made you think you could take me on alone?" No sooner had he spoken than his eyes turned icy. He picked up Uchiha and punched him in the gut. Then he grabbed his head, slammed his knees into his face, flipped him over and kicked his shoulder into the ground, kicked the chest and knocked him away, drove an elbow to his head, swept the front of the head head-on, connected with the kick, kicked the leg and hit the back of the head again. Finally, he punted him like a football. The moves were brutal and merciless, Kakuzu putting all his force into each strike. The final kick sent Uchiha flying, smashing hard against the edge of the barrier. His head was a bloody pulp, his face unrecognizable. Everyone watching gasped. At this rate, they thought, even an iron ball would be flattened, but then, Kakuzu glanced sideways, a slight frown on his face as he looked at Uchiha lying motionless. The barrier hasn't opened yet. Are you still not dead? Outside the barrier, separated by the jutsu, Terumi Mei and Haiden could only watch as Uchiha fell like he wanted to die. Then, in short order, in less than a minute, Kakuzu had knocked the stuffing out of him. It was an awful sight. A minute ago, he'd been a handsome young man. Now he looked like a pile of mashed potatoes. Terumi Mei, Haiden. They both fell silent. With the big brother, you were as fierce as a tiger in one operation, but when you rushed forward you couldn't even open a hole for me, so you were beaten back. You said, what are you planning? But then, Uchiha, beaten to a pulp, slowly extended his fingers, grabbing the barrier and the cliff to pull himself up. The swollen, bloody mess that had been his head began to heal rapidly. Soon, there wasn't a single wound left. This was thanks to a technique Uchiha had just learned from Shinnome, forbidden technique, physical transformation. It allowed him to rapidly recover from injuries by consuming vitality and physical strength. Orochimaru would later use this as a basis for developing his miraculous regeneration technique. Uchiha was back at full strength, standing tall, though the bloodstains made him look ferocious. His energy hadn't flagged in the slightest. Far from being ashamed of his defeat, he gasped for air and started laughing. Ha 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 ha. I knew it. Uchiha pulled the kunai from his pouch, took off the threads of earthly resentment, wrapped them around his finger, and tugged. This is about as tough as ninja wire. And Kakuzu can't control it once it's detached from his body. I can use this as a ninja tool. Terumi Mei and Haiden stared, speechless, feeling a lump in their throats as they watched Uchiha's delighted expression. Are you nuts? You just went out there to get your face caved in to figure out this? Terumi Mei glared at Uchiha, standing just on the other side of the barrier. She pounded hard on the barrier and said angrily, open this thing and let me in. Or you're gonna die. Huh? Uchiha turned, hearing her voice. Seeing Mei, Terumi and Haiden still there, he couldn't help but frown. Why haven't you guys left yet? Didn't I tell you to run? Hearing this, both Terumi Mei and Haiden looked pissed. Stop trying to be a lone wolf. If you're leaving, we're leaving together. Uchiha was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. In the end, he pretended not to hear anything, changed the subject, and said solemnly to them, this isn't some useless thing. This is crucial information. Then, Uchiha looked at Terumi Mei and asked seriously. Perfect, you're still here. Can you tell me the hand seals for the water Fang blade? Terumi Mei frowned. The water Fang blade technique was a secret art of the Terumi clan. It was used by the future 6th Mizukage Chojuro in his duel with Otsutsuki Urashiki. The 6 Paths ninja fishing rod, which can hold the Otsutsuki Ura style, has both deformation and low power consumption. It is a very precious ninjutsu. She hesitated, but after a moment's thought, she finally said, it's Boardog Tiger. What are you planning? Uchiha nodded. While the Sharingan could see the general flow of chakra within a body, it wasn't precise enough to replicate ninjutsu, but knowing the hand seals, combined with the recorded chakra flow, would give him a good chance of reproducing the technique. Uchiha had tested his own chakra affinities and found they were water and fire, the prerequisites for this jutsu. You'll see. Uchiha didn't elaborate. He turned, holding the kunai, and began forming the hand seals. Boardog Tiger. After only 2 attempts, he successfully created a swirling blade of water about 2.5 feet long on the kunai. During their brief clash, Uchiha had keenly observed that this technique had severed Kakuzu's earthly resentment tentacles, and their brief but intense battle had already proven that, in terms of basic taijutsu, even with the Sharingan and his natural combat intuition, Uchiha was no match for Kakuzu. who had over 70 years of fighting experience. If he just goes up to level A, then he will definitely lose. But in the world of ninjas, ninjutsu can create miracles. Uchiha has a long list of forbidden ninjutsu and even the superb silk shuriken technique. He believes that a miracle will eventually be born in his hands. So, his first step would be to borrow some ninja tools from Kakuzu. Thanks to book friends 2019013012152129, book friends 201708190347555198, Eve JJ, go to sleep primary school student, the invincible is me for their monthly votes. Thank you all foster fathers, thank you all for your recommendation votes. Please collect, recommend, and read, this is really important to me. Bang bang bang. Chapter 47, Falsehood against Falsehood, Falsehood after Falsehood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The battle between ninjas is a battle of wits. Uchiha Ci used taijutsu to attack, and Kakuzu returned the blows, partly because he was being baited and wanted to pound the kid, but also to test him. After all, this kid had rushed in with a barrier up, without a word, like he was sure he could cover the other two kids' escape. Kakuzu didn't buy it. He figured the kid had some tricks up his sleeve. Caution had been his biggest advantage since the Warring States period. Ever since he got played by that guy's wooden clone, Kakuzu had been seeing things clearly. He had burned those lessons into his very being. Now, seeing that Uchiha Ci, after withstanding the relentless physical assault, was back on his feet, looking like an unstoppable monster, all his injuries healed, though he was panting and looked exhausted. The situation wasn't looking good. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. Medical ninjutsu? No, something's off about that healing. Even with palm healing, that level of recovery during a fight was ridiculous. Kakuzu tilted his head, glancing at the cliff. Besides the three brats, he remembered a tall, middle-aged guy in a yellow coat, and that guy gave off a weird vibe, like he wouldn't be easy to kill. That just as Kakuzu glanced sideways, he froze, looking toward the edge of the barrier. Out there, standing on the cliff, the middle-aged ninja in the yellow coat stared at the kid, a look of shock in his eyes. Kakuzu instantly understood. That's how the brat learned that crazy forbidden technique. Are they master and student? Is he surprised by his student's progress? Is he using me to train his disciple? Kakuzu frowned, sensing something bigger at play. This kid set up a barrier for a one-on-one brawl, pulled out some forbidden technique, and pushed his teammates aside to fight alone. It was like he wouldn't give Kakuzu any respect unless he beat him to a pulp. This old-timer was spooked. He thought, who's using who here? Now it was all crystal clear, this kid definitely had someone backing him. With that thought, Kakuzu's mindset subtly shifted. Back on the field, Uchiha Ci looked at Kakuzu, his eyes narrowing. He could feel what was going on in his body. After using the forbidden technique, flesh transformation, to recover, his body felt rusty, not as responsive as before. The technique was powerful, but the side effects were harsh. Shinnon could use it with almost no drawbacks because he combined it with the incomplete zero-tailed chakra, changing the point of energy drain. Orochimaru could use it because of his body modifications and reanimation jutsu, letting him swap bodies afterward. But Uchiha Ci was just burning through his own life force. He figured he could use the technique maybe 2 more times in his current condition, so he needed medical attention fast, otherwise, he'd die from the drain. So, he only had 2 chances. Uchiha took a deep breath, his Sharingan flaring. He leaned forward, sprinting with the same posture, but this time he was holding something. A swirling water blade, courtesy of Mei Terumi. Water release, water Fang blade. Asterisk thwack. Thwack. Thwack, *.3 shurikens cut through the air. Trying the same trick again, Kakuzu narrowed his eyes, immediately shifting position and unleashing a volley of earth grudge tentacles, knocking down the shurikens and aiming to crush Uchiha Ci. After the taijutsu exchange, Kakuzu had a read on the brat's reflexes. Damn good, *. If it hadn't been for his unique body and the earth grudge threads to entangle the kunai, the kid's footwork combo would have landed. Now, the guy was pulling out a water jet that could slice through the tentacles. The calculations in his head were going haywire. He wasn't about to stand still and let Uchiha give him another pedicure. The fight was escalating fast. when Uchiha saw Kakuzu switch tactics and send out a barrage of threads, he grinned. The blackmail value of this water blade was better than a kunai. Before he could even get close enough to give Kakuzu a pedicure, the guy was showering him with expensive ninja tools. Uchiha slammed on the brakes, grinding to a halt against the cliff. Holding the blade, he flourished it in a beautiful arc. His Sharingan locked onto the incoming tentacles, then, blade in hand, he crouched, gathering his strength, and swung. First, Yunlu, Illusion Slash. The tentacles brushed past his right shoulder, followed immediately by another move, Yunlu, 3 Days and Moon Slash. A perfect copy of the Yunlu swordsmanship he'd only seen once in the volcano and boiling sea. The swirling water Fang blade flashed with 3 moon-like arcs. Slash. Thud. Thud, star, the 3 tentacles snapped apart. Uchiha immediately dropped to a squat, gathering the fallen tentacles into a pile like shuffling mahjong tiles. He grabbed a handful and stuffed them into his ninja tool pouch, grinning like he'd just gotten away with something. He turned and ran, dodging more tentacles. In a flash, he pulled out the empty thread spool from his ninja tool and quickly wound the messy earth grudge threads onto it. Only when the spool was tangled full did Uchiha Ci grin like he'd scored a major win. Ci might seem to have a ton of ninjutsu and forbidden techniques at his disposal, but ignoring the fire release techniques. Like Fireball and Phoenix Flower, which were more smoke than fire, only 2 techniques truly threatened Kakuzu. Those just happened to come from Elder Setsuna Uchiha style, Thread Shuriken Technique. This was the core of all of Uchiha's current tactics, one word, speed. So fast that the opponent had no time to make hand signs, no time to use ninjutsu, no time to defend. Forcing them to dodge and opening a chance for Uchiha Ci to strike a decisive blow. A third-rate Uchiha feints with Shuriken, a second-rate Uchiha uses Shuriken to sneak attack, and a first-rate Uchiha uses Shuriken to seize the opportunity. The superb level of the Uchiha-style Shuriken Jutsu was rated S rank, because in itself, it's a finishing move. Chapter 48 The Correct Way to Open Shuriken Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The moon was sinking, and the sky was starting to glow. The spring breeze, which should have been gentle, was whipping around. Tendrils of dark energy lashed down. The sounds of impacts were almost constant, but none of them hit. Every time they were about to connect, Uchiha dodged as if he had a sixth sense, ducking, rolling, or flipping away. Even without sight, he was avoiding every attack. This is some kind of crazy intuition, Kakuzu muttered, frowning as he watched Uchiha dart around, doing something with his hands. He knew he couldn't let this continue. He used his tendrils to rip a large hole in the cliff face, tearing out boulder after boulder. He hurled them at Uchiha. Whoosh. Whoosh, star, the rocks twisted through the air, smashing forward. Chirumi Mei, outside the barrier, gasped. This was like a dozen guys hitting you with earth-style, stone pillars at once, sealing off all escape routes, forcing you to take the hit. But that was just the beginning. Kakuzu kept the boulders flying while making hand signs with both hands. Then, the 2 masks on his back detached themselves, emerging as dark, threaded figures squatting on Kakuzu's shoulders, his fire and wind release masks. Coming together, they were about to unleash, combined Jutsu, Flame Wind Devastation. This jutsu combined the fire release mask monster and the wind release mask monster. They simultaneously used fire release, searing torrent and wind release, pressure damage to create a massive inferno. Kakuzu had already blocked the escape routes with boulders. In this confined space, Uchiha couldn't avoid it. Kakuzu's face was hard as he delivered his verdict. Game over, kid. The words hung in the air. Boom, star. A sea of fire erupted, and a cyclone raged. Every inch of space was consumed by Kakuzu's attack. All you could see was dust, rocks, scythe-like wind blades, fiery tendrils reaching up from the ground, and sparks flying everywhere. Everything would be destroyed in seconds. But in this hellish landscape, this vision of utter destruction, strangely, Uchiha Ci wasn't afraid. His eyes were wide, as if trying to memorize every detail of this apocalyptic scene. He felt a jolt of electricity coursing through his entire body, from head to toe, fingertips to heart. It burrowed deeper, into his cells, trying to flip some kind of switch. Dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins flooded his brain, sending Uchiha into a state of pure bliss. Talent, development of combat intuition, has improved. You can now use your body more skillfully. Then, Uchiha glanced down at the dark tendrils wrapped around his fingers and grinned. He looked up, one last look at Kakuzu, his fingers curled slightly, his fingertips arched, the Sharingan's tomo spun wildly, almost blurring into a solid black line, his eyes blazed with reckless determination. Bring it on! Bring it on! Bring it on! Fight! If you don't, you die. Death is the only end to battle. I'm risking everything for that final moment. I'm gonna get what I want. Uchiha closed his eyes, his Sharingan couldn't keep up with his speed anymore. He chose to trust his instincts, he trusted the battle plan he'd already formed in his mind. First step, Uchiha pulled the 4 remaining shuriken from his pouch, each wrapped with a single strand of thread. He hurled them into the sea of fire, the giant rocks, and the wind blades. Shink. 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 Shink, star, the shuriken tore through the air, trailing black threads, and embedded themselves into a distant boulder. Then, Uchiha made a slight movement. The threads he'd set during his evasive maneuvers suddenly tightened and appeared from the ground, their point of intersection right below Uchiha's feet, like a bowstring drawn back, ready to be released. Boom. Star, the giant bow made of thread propelled Uchiha forward. Like an arrow, he plunged into the fire, pulling the threads attached to the 4 shuriken, altering their trajectory midair. Spinning his body, he bounced off the flying boulders to gain momentum and accelerate. Slipping through the gap between 2 massive rocks colliding, as a sharp wind blade threatened to slice him, he flipped and spun, forming a hand seal before the flames could burn him. Tiger hair snake. Water release, raging waves. Uchiha held the water jet in his right hand and pulled the thread with his left, controlling his trajectory, spinning wildly. Then he snapped his eyes open. Is he dead? Kakuzu narrowed his eyes. The storm and sea of fire obscured everything, combined with the boulders he'd thrown to cut off escape. There was no way the kid could survive, unless he had jutsu stronger than his own. Kakuzu couldn't imagine any other way the kid could survive, and his jutsu came from the hearts of the strongest people he'd hunted over decades. Earth style, earth spear, wind style, pressure, thunder style, false darkness, fire style, searing torrent, water style, water curtain, 5 hearts. The 5 jutsu he could cast had reached peak levels. Kakuzu didn't think a kid his age possessed that kind of power, so, he had to be dead, or close to it. Kakuzu glanced at the 3 figures outside the barrier, his eyes cold. He looked past Haiden, his target, and Terumi Mei, then in another direction. Shino, in his yellow coat, stood calmly. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes, wondering why this guy was here. Would he interfere with his capture of Haiden? After all, he hadn't even flinched when his disciple died in front of him. He must be ruthless. Terumi Mei and Haiden stared at the terrifying combined jutsu, their eyes wide with shock. That's even worse than the wind style from before. Uchiha Ci. Terumi Mei grit her teeth, scanning the barrier anxiously, but no matter what she looked at, within the boundaries of the cliff, other than the spot where Kakuzu stood, there was nothing but a sea of fire. Haiden knelt on a tree branch, looking at the scene with despair. All he could see was fire, fire, fire. Kakuzu, fire, fire, fire. This guy in the black mask, with his tendrils and his jutsu, was the very picture of Korn. All he could hear was the wind and the fire, and below the cliff, the refugees from Yuno country, devastated by Kakuzu's ninjutsu, screamed in agony. Haiden clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and watched with trembling eyes. His eyes stung, he squeezed them shut, gripped the tree trunk, and burst into tears. Then, with all his might, he roared toward the barrier. Uchiha Ci. If you're still fucking alive, get your ass out here. His cry echoed and died. For a moment, silence fell. The oppressive flames made it hard to breathe, but then, the sea of fire shuddered. Like a runaway truck. Gravel, dirt, weeds, sparks. A spinning ball of blue sword light ripped through, flipping up and down as it tore through the inferno. Suddenly, the wind screamed. A massive hole opened in the wall of flames. Uchiha Ci was like a sharp arrow, spinning through the air, aimed at Kakuzu's head. He took a deep breath, gripped the sword with both hands, and brought it down on Kakuzu's neck with all his strength, the water jet screaming as it accelerated to the limit. The blade gleamed like fire, reflecting a pair of cold, ruthless, blood-red eyes. Kakuzu snapped his eyes open. Please collect, recommend, and read Bang Bang Bang. Chapter 49, Stab the Heart and Ignite the Fire in the Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The water jets whined. Before Kakuzu even arrived, the hairs on his neck prickled. Uchiha Ci's lightning-fast attack caught Kakuzu completely off guard and hit him where it hurt. Okay, so Kakuzu can be practically immortal, as long as he has those 5 life-replenishing hearts. He keeps coming back, but even so, his head is a vulnerable point. If it gets chopped off, he loses control over his earth grudge fear threads, giving his opponent an opening to attack the heart still inside him. That's something Kakuzu just couldn't allow. A brush with death he hadn't felt in decades suddenly hit him hard. Like hell, I'll let you succeed. Kakuzu's eyes went wide, he gritted his teeth, and roared. He slammed his hands together in a seal, and his skin instantly darkened. Earth Release, Earth Spear. Despite the name, it's a defensive ninjutsu. It hardens the skin for both attack and defense, making it incredibly destructive. It can easily smash through walls and block exploding tags. However, there's a major drawback. After using it, his body becomes stiff from the hardening. This would prevent Kakuzu from using the taijutsu he used to crush Uchiha Ci. Uchiha Ci's eyes narrowed, and a smirk touched his lips. The water knife that was about to slice down on Kakuzu vanished, leaving only a kunai in his hand. Then, gripping the kunai in a reverse grip, he plunged it into the wind release mask of earth grudge fear on Kakuzu's left shoulder. Thwack! Aaronkar's sharp edge. The wind release earth grudge fear mask shattered, narrowly missing the heart inside. What? Kakuzu gasped, disbelief flooding his green eyes. Uchiha Ci didn't cut him with the water jet after all. Instead, at the last second, he switched targets, like he knew exactly everything about him. Desperate, Kakuzu twisted his shoulders to evade and quickly used a secret technique to control the fire release earth grudge fear mask on his right shoulder. Facing Uchiha Ci, who was right in front of him, he opened his maw and blasted out a fiery ball of destruction. Fire Release, Headhunter Hard Work. It explodes into a massive sea of flames. But, faced with this deadly ninjutsu, the fireball about to engulf his face was reflected in his scarlet Sharingan. Uchiha Ci's eyes were calm. He raised his index fingers, and a dark thread appeared on the ground. He circled and pulled the silk thread with his fingers. Uchiha Ci's entire body was yanked, and he slid under Kakuzu's legs. Springing to his feet, he climbed onto Kakuzu's back and stabbed the water release earth grudge fear mask with his kunai. The fireball shot out and crashed into the barrier, a bright explosion of fireworks. Kakuzu's face darkened, veins bulging on his forehead. It's that crazy intuition again. This kid's body reacts faster than he thinks. Damn, he's like a flea. With that thought, Kakuzu glared and clasped his hands together. The 4 masks on his back twisted, and a body with dark resentment half crawled out. Then, it opened its maw at Uchiha Ci. Wind Release, Pressure. Lightning Release, False Darkness. Fire Release, Headhunter Hard Work. Water Release, Water Formation Wall. The 4 masks became machine guns, spitting ninjutsu at Uchiha. Boom. 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 Boom, star, water splashed, winds howled, lightning crackled, and flames scorched. Seeing this, Uchiha Ci grinned and twitched his fingers to yank the thread again. He was like a sharp arrow, spinning, leaping, closing his eyes to feel the pulse. When he opened them again, he'd slipped through the gap between the 4 ninjutsus and landed back on Kakuzu's back. Immediately, Uchiha Ci stepped on Kakuzu's back and leaped high, spinning 360 degrees in the air. Bringing his hands together, he swung his arms straight over his head, then, pulled all the strings. The threads on the ground snapped taut, shredding the earth wall and wrapping around Kakuzu's body like a whip. His limbs, chest, abdomen, head, and even the masked body behind him, were all tightly bound. pulled, sliced. Shriek, 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 the agonizing sound echoed. What is this? Kakuzu's pupils shrank. He realized he was tangled in his own earth grudge fear threads. He struggled fiercely, but the more he struggled, bound by multiple earth grudge fear silk threads, the tighter they became. Only the body strengthened by earth release, earth spear could tear apart some of the threads, but it would take several seconds to break free, but those few seconds of control, for Uchiha Ci, were enough. He took a deep breath, formed seals, and drew his kunai, oxhair snake. Water release, water Fang blade swirled in his hand again. Then, Uchiha's eyes turned savage, and he bit down hard. SSSS. The cold air rushed into his chest, turning into fuel and sparking between his teeth. Even his scarlet eyes burned like fire. This is it. All I want is this moment. Uchiha's eyes flashed, and he slammed his fist against his heart and charged forward. Fire release chakra mode, engage. Blazing fire attribute chakra surged through Uchiha Ci's body. Burn the soul. Go beyond your limits, the power spread from his heart to every inch of his being. In an instant, fire erupted. Lighting up the entire cliff, the castle, and the refugee camp. Countless refugees from the rain country craned their necks, squinting as they gazed at the barrier in the sky. Inside, a sun was rising. The blinding light tore through the moonlit night and heralded the dawn. Uchiha Ci, what are you doing? Terumi Mei and Haiden exclaimed, eyes wide. Shinon, who had been quietly watching from the cliff, finally lost his composure. He stared in shock. He'll die using that kind of technique, that kind of power. Even if he secretly learned the forbidden technique of physical transformation from me, he'll still die. Crazy. Is he crazy? For that meaningless bond, for two so-called friends he's known for less than a day. That kind of person. Shinon clenched his fists, staring at Uchiha Ci in disbelief. Shinon's withered heart felt rekindled by that great sun. A fierce jealousy and yearning bloomed within him. If he had a friend like that, on the day Kong Ninja Village was destroyed, would he have chosen to live or die with them? Or would he have, like now, swallowed his shame and lived a miserable existence, a life worse than death? Inside the barrier. Reia! Uchiha screamed, eyes bulging. He was barely able to contain his violent power, forced to roar to release the pressure. Gripping the kunai with both hands, the erupting fire attribute chakra surged into the water blade, and the rotating blade instantly evaporated. A fire blade, 6 feet long, erupted from the hilt. Wielding the flaming sword, Uchiha Ci's eyes burned red as he slashed a fiery arc. He roared at Kakuzu, who was sweating bullets. Weren't you having a great time just now? Now. It's my turn. Chapter 50. A narrow room, facing waves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom. Uchiha's word struck him like a physical blow, and Kakuzu stumbled. His heart lurched. A primal panic, long forgotten, surged through him, a creeping cold dread like ants swarming his insides. The last time he felt this, it was 45 years ago. Then, he'd faced the ninja god's wooden clone with a crushing sense of responsibility and dread, but what truly terrified him then, was that the wooden clone, standing atop a 200-meter-tall wooden golem, now, fire chakra blazed around Uchiha. The air grew dry. Hot, searing, a miniature sun was blooming before his very eyes. The familiar, distant fear dragged Kakuzu's buried weaknesses and terror to the surface. As these emotions clawed at his heart, hardened by resentment and greed, his eyes snapped open. The earth grudge tentacles erupted from the sutures on his body, bristling. Like a cornered animal, he instinctively sought cover, a semblance of safety in the darkness. The moon was fading, the night silent, endless darkness enshrouded him, but the blinding light of the burgeoning sun offered Kakuzu no refuge. In its harsh, unforgiving glare, Kakuzu was forced to confront his past, his face twisted in a grimace. This is a joke. He's insane. Insane. A suicidal maniac. How can an Uchiha with a single Tomo Sharingan wield a technique like this? Kakuzu realized instantly, this was a forbidden technique. A desperate, life-or-death gambit beyond anything he'd ever seen. He cursed inwardly, what had he ever done to this kid? Why was he unleashing this kind of power on him? This had to be their first meeting, right? As Uchiha's aura intensified, Kakuzu felt a creeping numbness spread across his scalp, reacting instantly, that he dispelled Earth Release and Earth Spear. Letting the Earth threads shred his body, a geyser of blood erupted. His tissues and organs, Earth Release, Earth Grudge hearts, head, limbs, and torso, scattered in all directions, only to be reassembled by the writhing tentacles. Kakuzu had no time to worry about how many pieces were missing. Grah! As Uchiha roared, overwhelmed by the raw power, Kakuzu forcefully broke free and formed hand seals, 4 black shadows shot from his back, 3 lined up, and 1 stood shoulder to shoulder with Kakuzu. The 3 shadows represented the elemental hearts, wind, fire, and lightning. The 3 masked creatures opened their mouths, which glowed white, red, and blue. The 3 ninjutsu converged, accumulating energy, forming the prototype of a terrifying blue chakra cannon. They were preparing to unleash something far more devastating than a simple combination technique, Earth Grudge, Final Blast. Just then, Uchiha's final roar cut through the air. Now. It's my turn. Uchiha watched as Kakuzu summoned his 4 masked entities. The Water Release Earth Grudge mask took the lead, creating a large amount of water. Kakuzu followed up by setting off the water formation wall to block Uchiha Ci's sight, covering up other masks' movements, and Uchiha Ci knew that he must prepare for the other 3 masks to launch the strongest combined ninjutsu, Earth Resentment U, final shot. The enemy is ready to attack, get ready for a hearty duel with him. Then how could he let the other party down? Uchiha Ci held the blazing sword in both hands, and couldn't help the excited grin that stretched across his face. He felt like he could cleave a mountain in 2 with a single strike. This power, beyond human limits, came at the price of death, a price Uchiha Ci craved. And his opponent was Kakuzu, a Kage-level powerhouse. Whether he killed Kakuzu in 1 strike or Kakuzu blew him to smithereens with his ultimate technique, Earth Grudge, Final Blast. Uchiha Ci would profit either way. As long as he died in a full-throttle battle with his opponent, he could go home with a full 500 million yuan, 500 million. That's 500 million. That's more than 7.5 million a year, in interest alone. I can lie down for the rest of my life. His wonderful life is right in front of you. The thought sent a surge of adrenaline through him. He stepped forward, raised the blade. Violent, scorching chakra exploded from every pore, turning the space behind him into a miniature sun. The cliff face shattered, spiderwebs of cracks spreading across the stone. This overwhelming power transported Uchiha Ci back to childhood, to the days of Xiaodu from Dragon Fighter. Holding his sword aloft, he cried out, "We gotta win, Dragon Sword ascend!" He wants to shout it with the energy of a child, with all of his being. At this moment, memories of the past year in the ninja world flashed before him. Uchiha Shisui, Uchiha Setsuna, Uchiha Saikairo, Uchiha Obito, and his grandmother, the owner of the ninja shop, Haiden, Terumi Mei, Shino, Kakuzu, Kumogakure, and the evil sect's 3 members. Faces and scenes flickered through his mind until finally, Uchiha's eyes locked on his target. He tightened his grip on the hilt and raised the blade above his head. Like King Arthur raising Excalibur, the 6-foot-long fire blade erupted into a raging inferno. The flames reached towards the sky. A blazing sword of justice rising from the sun. Then, Uchiha Ci raised his sword high, his voice rising to a roar. Since we have to say goodbye eventually, then this sword is called Final Blade Farewell. The giant blade swept down, cleaving the very sky itself. At the same time, Kakuzu's face contorted in a snarl. Why are you trying to kill me? This is just a dream. Earth Grudge, Final Blast. At the final word, the chakra cannon roared, unleashing a blue beam of pure death. Next moment, a subtitle suddenly appeared. When this chapter ends, the branch plot about Kakuzu comes to an end, and the main plot begins next. If you like it, please be sure to support a follow-up reading every day. This is really important for new authors. Let me report that the second round of recommended website shortcuts have been received. After 3 rounds of recommendations, I still have a few $100 left to read. Urgent reading. Ask for help. I have started to collect the manuscript. As long as it can enter the 4th round of recommendation, I promise to publish it on the shelf for everyone to enjoy.